Hey everyone, we are so excited to have you join us today for our LinkedIn Live event on marketing tools of the trade. Welcome. Just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. This recording is the exclusive property of Real Estate Closing Path. All video files and commentary shared during this session belong to RECP and may be used in future trainings or marketing promotions. Our intention is to represent you and RECP in the very best light. And if you're new here, just a brief introduction into who we are. We are the third branch in a suite of organizations owned by Mary Ann Harris. She started in the industry over 20 years ago with Positively Balanced, which provides third-party escrow account reconciliation services. And then in 2020, she launched Positively Closed, which provides remote closing support solutions. And then we are Real Estate Closing Path. We are the training branch, and we offer 9 different workshops in all aspects of the closing process. And again, we're glad to have you with us today. You can follow us on any of the various social media channels. We have a presence on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you like to connect professionally. We invite you to follow us there at Real Estate Closing Path. On this slide, you can see a list of all the workshops that we offer. Any of these can be presented as a lunch and learn either in your office or also virtually. And then we're also excited to announce that all of our workshops are GREC approved, so that's for realtors. Most of them are currently approved by the Georgia Bar for CLE credits. We're working on all of them being approved, and we hope to have that by the end of the year. We also have a good bit of accreditation in the state of Florida, looking to expand to other states in 2024 and 2025 as well. Our presenter today is Pier Boulogne-Glavin. She is our assistant trainer and head of marketing here at RECP. She was in our inaugural training class back in 2021. She was brand new to the industry, but went off to work in a local law firm as a pre-closer and quickly advanced to a closer position. She also worked at Positively Closed as a post-closer. So she has really had her hands in all the various aspects of the closing process. Currently, she is one of our assistant trainers here and again oversees all the marketing. And I've invited her to share what she knows, hoping that it can help you in your firm or organization to promote and market your services as well. So Pierre, I'm going to let you take over.
All right, thank you so much, Janis. Give me just a second to take control. Like Janis said, I am the head of marketing here at RECP, and I specialize in digital marketing, so that will be the main focus of today's presentation. And the digital space is really where everybody is currently in terms of startup marketing and title agency marketing. A lot of what we do is digital and connecting with people online in the different spaces that they are occupying. We're also going to be looking at everything from like a business to business perspective. As a title agency, most everything that you're doing in terms of marketing is business to business, with a little bit of business to consumer when we're trying to create a good background of information. Thank you, Janis, for putting that in the chat. A good background of information for the people that are coming into office for the closing. So our buyers and sellers, when they look at us, we have a really established presence, but really the people that we're trying to draw to us are real estate agents and they are business owners. So when we think about things from a business to business perspective, the marketing looks a little bit different than if we were trying to attract consumers for a product. So this is kind of a follow-up to our previous marketing presentation, which we have on YouTube, and I'm putting the link in the chat right now. If you are watching this as a YouTube video, it'll be in the description of that video. We consider this kind of like a part 2 to that. In part 1, we talk about authentic marketing, connecting with your audience, things like that, and establishing a brand. And in this presentation, we're going to talk about content creation and how to not get overwhelmed by the process of creating things to market your business. So a little table of contents about today's presentation. We're going to start off with kind of a review of what we talked about in the last presentation very briefly about who our audience is and how we're reaching them. Then we'll go into the content creation portion, mistakes to avoid, and then some examples of things we recommend that represent good branding. But before we jump into that, I thought this graphic was really representative of how we need to be thinking about marketing. So a lot of times when we are new to this space or just starting up our marketing efforts, it's very easy to compare yourself to everybody who's already in the run section here, which is the last step, obviously, but we all have to start on steps 1 through 4 before we can get to step 5. So standing, we're starting up our business. Stretching, we are creating the branding surrounding our business. Walk, we are starting to create graphics and things that are in relation. We're starting our logo, etc. here. Jog would be those first few posts or things that we're getting to reach the graphics to reach out to our audience, and then run is when we can continually use those things to push out and reach to our audience over and over again. So I just think it's important to think about everything that comes before the final step, so you don't get overwhelmed in that process, because it can be very overwhelming to see all of these people that are already well established and thinking about how am I going to get to that point when it seems like a mountain. Janis, you're completely right. It creates that momentum to keep going once you do all of the steps to get to the final step. So talking about the keys of content creation, things that I like to keep in mind when we're coming up with materials, we're thinking about what information are we conveying, what message are we trying to promote to people, whether that be information, education, testimonials, something fun. What are we trying to convey to people? And then how are we supporting that visually? What is the visual representation of the words that we are using there? And then is there a balance between those two? And the balance is really the most underrepresented part of the process, creating that equal balance between these two parts. So is it too information heavy? Is it too visually heavy? Those things throw it off and people aren't going to understand your message. It dilutes everything. So we have to think about really how are we balancing this to be the most effective communication to the people that we're trying to reach. So we are going to go ahead and look at a few examples of some images. So this is going to be some audience participation. So if anybody can type in the chat or on our call line, if you can let me know what your thoughts are about the following images. So what can we do with these images to better support the information that we are trying to convey? So here's the first one. We have our nice little title agency image. Can anybody let me know what you would do differently or things about this that you think maybe, yeah, big font issue. Anybody let me know what you think about this that is not supporting the message that we are trying to convey. I'll give you just a second. Yes, font is hard to read. On our call line, make the font a bit more clear. Okay, yeah, so definitely we have a font issue here. There are a few issues with this one, in my opinion. First, I think that there's too much blank space. There's not a whole lot happening with the majority of this image, so we're not really utilizing the space that we have. Yes, the font is very difficult to read. It's illegible practically. You can see kind of how it says title. I always try to be careful with cursive fonts, especially ones that have like a word that would have a T and an L next to each other, because typically the T cross is going to go through the L as well, and that can look confusing, like 2 T's in a row when you're not trying to, specifically in the word title especially. So it's obviously too small. We need to blow that up. We need to pick a more legible font. Yeah, it does look misspelled. And then there's no logo on this image. So it's really hard to tell what this relates to, and we're not supporting our brand image. We need to create a library of our graphics that all have the same type of branding. So at least using the same logo on everything. So when people see this in a split second, when they're scrolling through Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram, that they can know exactly what this relates to. You wouldn't know what business this is, and you would never remember who this is, like what message they're trying to convey to you to support, themselves as a brand. So great job. All right, this is graphic number 2. What does everybody think? Is there anything that you could change about this? What are our thoughts? I agree. It's kind of scary. Our call line says it's hard to read the website. Any other thoughts on this one? Or image is not appropriate for the event. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, small type at the bottom. I completely agree. So definitely we need to be aware of the platform that our image is going to be displayed on, because it'll render in different sizes depending on where we're putting it, and making sure it's size appropriate. Absolutely correct. And that's something that I didn't think of before putting it in this presentation. It makes it smaller, it's scaling down so that that part isn't even legible. So absolutely correct. That would need to be larger to be able to be legible and get our message across. Most egregiously, this image does not suit a farmer's market, in my humble opinion. It really wouldn't attract the audience that you're looking for to come to a farmer's market. It's more like, you know, punk rock show. So yes, it's not congruent with the message that we're trying to convey. And then once again, we don't have any specific sort of branding here. So farmer's market's very general. It's not even telling us really the location. I mean, we have that down in local park, so perhaps there's something someone can glean from this, but we have to assume that people are looking at things for a second at most. So we want to convey the most accurate information possible with the fewest amount of words possible. So striking that balance between specific but not overdoing it is very important. So I would definitely put a location in that. So, you know, we're in Kennesaw currently, so I would definitely have Kennesaw Farmers Market, etc. But yeah, most egregious would be that it is a skull with a mohawk instead of some nice fruits and vegetables. Okay, and lastly, here's our third image. Please give me your thoughts. Okay, too much text to read, ton of wording. Totally agree. It's very, very text heavy on this. So when we're thinking about that balance again, it's very unbalanced, and nobody is going to be reading this chunk of text. So yes, too much text. If you do read it, there are several typos in here, run-on sentences, and very informal language would just give us a holler, and we'll be ecstatic to provide. Like, it's just not very fitting for the message that we're trying to convey, which for this specifically, you know, branding agency services, we would be trying to convey professionalism in this. So it's very important to think about the language that we're using surrounding our branding as well. You know, if you're using very informal language, that could suit a very informal brand, but in the business to business space, typically we're looking for very professional branding and wording surrounding that. Also, just a pet peeve of mine, these little search bar graphics that can be put on things. If you can't actually use that as a searchable function within the graphic, it seems kind of pointless to me to list it as one. I don't think it conveys the message across to people that I need to look at it in a search bar. So to me, that's very awkward placement, and it just could be done better to further reinforce what you're trying to direct people to go to. Yeah, I agree. This does feel a bit too generic versus personal/professional. Yeah, I would agree, but at least it does have that logo branding in it, so we know who this is from. But yes, I agree. This could definitely be done in a way that you could so specifically identify with a brand, and this definitely would be in the more general category. So thank you everybody for playing along with that. So just a little review of the things that we're trying to avoid when creating graphics or anything that we're trying to push out to our audience. We're trying to avoid lack of information. So if we have image only without enough text, lack of visuals. So if we had text only, typos/grammatical errors. It doesn't ever hurt to read something 2 or 3 times. Mismatched branding, so making sure that our words and our images are accurately reflecting one another and supporting one another as well. And then also not being active. So if you just put up, you know, one post one time and then let it rot forever, it's not really supporting your image to be putting that in front of a new audience. Or even when people go to look you up to see what you're about, if you haven't posted something in 5 years, people don't really get a very good impression of just what you can do. It doesn't convey that you are busy, active, working hard, etc. Follow up with engagement, exactly. So here are a few examples of things that we have created here that we would say exemplify the different things that we talked about between balance, making sure that we have the proper text to support everything, and making it just visually appealing for our audience. So this is a graphic that we created for our back to school special. So we have very large legible font here. And once again, the presentation is a little bit smaller on Teams. So this would typically be blown up a little bit in our use cases, but it has everything very clearly written out about exactly what we are conveying, what is included in that, specific measurable time, and then we have our branding on it. So when you look at this, you can see that it belongs to us at Real Estate Closing Path and everything that goes along with this specific promotion. We also have, this is the front page of one of our training workshop flip cards, which is also a bit small for this screen, but you can see that we have some words bolded here that we want to catch people's eye with. And we have more information on here than we would for perhaps a graphic that we promote on social media, because this is something tactile that people are going to be holding, and we'll probably look at it for a little bit longer than something that they'd be scrolling through. But we also are trying to keep all of our information that we want people to really be looking at in an F formation. So what I mean is the way that people read is typically this top line, straight down, and then across. So we want to put all of our most important information here. And things, I mean, you know, there's a chunk of text here as well. People are probably going to breeze through that and not read every single word. So we're just trying to put our most important information within those sections. Because if the eye goes there first, at least we can grab people with that. And then here are a couple of our testimonials. So it's always good to be promoting your feedback from your audience on your social media. So we're going to put out our testimonials that we have from different conferences, different workshops. I love this one that has a photo of Janis on it because people love seeing a face to identify a brand with. It does make people look to see another human face. Once again, we've bolded some of the words. We try to keep within our brand colors. We always use our logo within the different graphics that we're creating, but trying to keep it visually interesting for our audience. They're not seeing the same thing over and over again. So we try to mix it up with the way that we're displaying the text. But it's just important to make sure that we're keeping in touch with our audience, making sure that they are seeing our content over and over again, so they can get an idea of what our brand is all about as well, and the things that we are trying to convey. Because if you aren't putting things out, that is what you're saying, that you aren't willing to put work forward. So whether or not you're participating, it is conveying a message all the same. So yes, I see in the chat, thank you, about the, yes, the grocery store. I agree. Put it at eye level where people can see it. So I think that brings us to the end of the presentation. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask about today's presentation or anything to do with marketing?
Thanks, Pier. This was really interesting. In fact, your tip about having all the important content in that F formation, that was new to me. I'd never heard that before. So that's really cool. So I have a question. What do you find to be the most challenging aspect of marketing?
I think in marketing, you always need to be thinking about the future. So thinking about what people want to see in the future is kind of like predicting future trends. Can be difficult just because nobody knows where things are going. We can guess about, you know, where our industry is going or where trends will go, or what visuals people just like to see. But it is kind of a guessing game of where exactly we think that'll be headed. So that can be a little bit challenging to try to stay ahead of the game, but that's also one of the fun parts, because you're never just resting on the laurels of what you've done before. It's always about creating something new.
Yeah. I love that you said that too. That's always important to keep it fresh, something new, new campaigns, new look, new layout, etc. It also reminded me, what you said reminded me of something we would talk about when I was coaching soccer, of all things. We would tell players not to keep your eye on where the ball is, but to anticipate where the ball is going to go next. And then that's how you knew where to go. So I love that you said to keep an eye on the future and, you know, what is kind of new now next. So that takes a lot of forward thinking and again, being willing to recreate, re-envision, redesign at times. So speaking of, my next question is, how long does it take to design something like a flyer? How much time would you spend on that?
Sure. Well, it depends because in most situations where you are working on graphic design or marketing, that is, my title, but there are other people in the mix too. So it may take me, a couple hours to play with something and draft it up. But then if I'm sending it out to other people for their opinion and their approval, because it's very important to get the feedback of other people because not everybody reads something the same way. Because I hear a sentence one way in my head does not mean that's the same way it's being perceived to somebody else. So just having another set of eyes is very important. So that back and forth can take a little bit of time, schedules permitting, and just, we might need to play with a few different iterations of the same thing to come up with the best product. So for something that we're going to be printing, I would say that probably a week of back and forth of us talking and looking at the different options there. But something like a graphic to go on social media, it depends on what exactly the content would be, but, play with that for an hour or so.
Right. Right. That's interesting. I love your reminder to get more than one set of eyes, on something that you're doing, whether it's proofreading or someone might have a different opinion or a different point of view. How much goes into your thought process of things like being inclusive in terms of diversity or whether it's different race or different age or gender? Does that factor into the process?
Well, I think in any sort of marketing, you always need to be aware of what your demographic is, so you can effectively communicate to them. Even, all title agencies need to be aware of like their location, who is around me, what's the median age around me, who is my target audience, in terms of all of those things, and making sure that, if you're trying to reach a younger audience, you're going where the younger audiences are, like on TikTok and Instagram. And if you're trying to reach an older audience, you need to be on Facebook and doing email campaigns, making sure that you are where your audience is. In terms of sensitivity, I think that's always important to be aware of if our words can be misconstrued, because we obviously don't want to offend somebody or make it look like our image is something different than what we're trying to promote. So yeah, I think it's always important to be aware. And then if you can have different sets of eyes who come from different backgrounds, that's great as well, because the way that somebody might perceive something who's, I don't know, from Michigan, maybe something colloquially,
Colloquial.
that's what I'm trying to go for, might come across really different than it does for me, who's always been from Georgia. So yeah, I think it's important to be sensitive to that.
Good insight. I love that reminder. Know your audience, who's your target audience, right? And keep that eye of sensitivity in mind as well with who's listening and following along. Maybe my last question. What do you feel is the best social media platform in this industry? Do you have like a top three, or what have you noticed in terms of engagement and feedback?
In terms of engagement, it does seem like Facebook and LinkedIn are very established places to start. But I think that once again, we have to look towards the future. So the average age of the home buyer today, the people are going to get older, and maybe people are finding their forever homes right now who are, in that 40 to 60 age range. So they might be aging out of home buying. Nothing is a hard and fast rule, but for the most part, they might be settling down, finding their forever place. And then people in their late 20s, early 30s are going to be in a different area than people who are hanging out, who are a little bit older. So we need to think about who we should be marketing towards for the future. So I think it's important to have a presence on everything that's current, which sounds like a lot. You can, repeat posts, have the same content across several different areas. So I know that's nobody wants to hear that you need to be doing it all, but it is kind of the truth. You do need to be looking at all of the different avenues and seeing where the success is for you based on your audience.
Yeah, good reminder to keep, an eye on the younger generation that might be on a different social media platform and to take advantage of all of it when and where you can. And maybe you're creating something once, but then able to repeat and put it out there in several places at one time. So excellent. Is there any final comment you want to share before we wrap things up?
Just that, you know, creating content for an audience should not feel scary. It's really the way that we connect with other people, and what we're putting out is the type of people that we're going to bring in. So if you're tailoring something specifically for, you know, you're trying to put out, I don't know, a really quirky image about like, we're so different from all other title agencies. That's the type of people you're going to attract, quirky people who, I don't know, just are trying to do something a little bit different. So just be authentic in what you're putting out to who you are. And those are the type of people that you will attract to you. And then your business will go smoother because you're communicating on the same wavelength as the people that you're working with. If you're trying to push something that isn't relatable to you, it's just harder because you're trying to put on a facade, and the people you're coming to, you have to communicate to them on the way that they're receiving the information, which just isn't always exactly who you are.
I really love that you said that, to be authentic. I always believe that there is an audience for every voice. And so for whatever services you provide, whatever sets you apart from the rest of the industry, be you, be truly you, and you'll draw in your right clientele and customers. So excellent reminder. Thank you so much, Pierre. Again, speaking of social media platforms, just a reminder that you can follow us on your favorite platform and at Real Estate Closing Path. And just a reminder again of the different trainings that we provide. Again, all of these are done virtually online and offered almost every month. And then our next LinkedIn Live event will be on different closing metaphors, meaning metaphors that we have used to help teach and help people to understand the closing process. That'll be next month, August 22nd at 11 a.m. Stay tuned. And thanks for being here today.
Thank you
so much. Bye-bye.